Hello everyone, my name is Julia. Welcome to my channel. In this video we'll be talking about the personal constitution. As an example, I'm going to use my own personal constitution that was inspired by Ray Dalio and Gretchen Rubin. I'm going to talk about what is a personal constitution, how you're going to write one, and why do you need one in the first place. Are you interested in creating the supreme law of your life? Then keep on watching. What is a personal constitution? Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines constitution as A. the basic principles or laws of a nation, state, or social group that determine the powers of the government and guarantee certain rights to people in it. And B. a written instrument embodying the rules of political or social organization. Okay, so what we're doing here is not as complex, but is as important. When it comes to a person, a constitution is just a fancy word for a set of principles. Basically, these are the overarching principles by which you live your life. You can obviously call it anything you want. You don't have to call it a constitution. I like this word because this sounds very fundamental. I got my inspiration from two people, Gretchen Rubin, who called her sets of principles commandments, and Ray Dalio, who calls it just principles. Ray Dalio's book, Principles, Life and Work, greatly influenced me and became the book of the year in 2018 for me. In this book, he's talking about his own personal story, how he became the man he is right now, and he's going into the great detail about the principles of life and work. I cannot recommend this book enough. This is really good. Ray puts a lot of emphasis on radical truth and radical transparency and introduces the idea of meritocracy in the book. All of that greatly impacted my thinking and inspired me to write my own set of principles. In the description below, I would leave the links to both Gretchen Rubin's article on her commandments, and she also has a really great podcast called Happier with Gretchen Rubin that I highly recommend as well, and a link to Ray Dalio's book, Principles, Life and Work. So why do you need a personal constitution? Well, to be fair, your life is not going to fall apart if you don't have one. However, it's a good tool to define and collect your core values and keep them in one place. Defining your own values is a key thing to get to know yourself better. Figuring out what's important to you and how to act when you are in obscure or difficult situation. The Constitution can guide you when you're in doubt or you need to make a decision. Okay. It's a reminder of who you are and what's true to you. And lastly, it's a really good self-reflection exercise. How to create a constitution. Even though it sounds very fundamental, essentially it's just a list. And I love all sorts of lists. Why lists? Well, I don't know about you, but I can never rely on my own memory, and I need to create an extension. Plus, lists create a structure. The most important part of writing it down is that you probably will not remember it all the time. You cannot keep it in your head. And you're very likely to get back to it and revise it and rewrite it. It's handy to have it written down and be quickly available, for instance, from your mobile phone, if you want to make changes. I keep all my notes in Notion, by the way. So what goes into that list? Think about the following. Who you essentially are. What would you do if you have a choice? What is valuable to you? Something that is truly important, but you tend to forget about once in a while. And behaviors that you appreciate and encourage in others. Most importantly, it has to come from you, not your colleagues, your family, your spouse, your friends, you. Also, it's okay that you make changes to it. And you will make changes over time because you evolve and so does your constitution. All right, now I'm going to give you the example of my own set of principles. I wrote them about 3 years ago after I read Ray Dalio's book. I honestly don't remember how much time it took me to write it. It feels like I wrote them in one go, but they still stand, so I haven't changed them that much. I think they are really helpful and I should definitely go through them more often. So my constitution is essentially 14 principles and one question. I wouldn't call it a principle, it's more of a guideline that I'm going into more detail right now. Yeah, I should put it in one of my principles to not put my private life on social media. First one is be Julia. That one I borrowed from Gretchen Rubin. She has her own Be Gretchen. And the beauty of that is that everyone can actually have a rule like that. Because it's about you. You decide who are you as a person, what kind of traits you have. You don't have to be like anybody else. So you decide what kind of behavior is you and how do you stick to your true self. I can give you quite a silly example. Let's say I know that I get really cranky late in the evening. That means that I would rather go to bed and sleep. But if I find myself in a bar with a friend sometime around midnight and I feel like because I'm tired I start getting really cranky and unpleasant, I know that about myself. So I would not pretend that I'm this party girl who likes to be out till the morning. I am not that person. So I would rather explain to a friend of mine that I think I would like to call it a night, I don't want to be unpleasant, you enjoy your night, and go home. Like that, I can avoid unnecessary conflicts and have everybody have a good time. Number 2, mind your own business. I think people should do this more often, especially when it comes to some personal life and questions about personal life. I think the rule here should be you do not get involved until you are explicitly asked or there is some kind of emergency happening. Number 3, be honest with yourself and others. That's inspired by Ray Dalio's radical honesty. I really like this idea. I think it makes communication very clear and you can avoid a lot of problems doing that. Sometimes it can be really hard to be honest with both myself and other people. Number 4, don't judge too quickly. I know it's hard not to judge, especially when the person is very different from us. They look different, they think different, they do things differently. I think this is important to be mindful about those differences, keep them in mind before judging someone too quickly. Number 5, when criticizing, offer another solution. Well, isn't it easy to complain about things? My personal idea is if I criticize something, I have to come up with another solution. Otherwise, I don't say anything. Number 6, be kind to others. You never know what another person is going through. What we see is often just the surface, and we never know what's going on behind closed doors. Number 7, also be kind to yourself. One thing that I keep on reminding myself that I am the most important person in my life. Number 8, prioritize sleep. This is the principle I should remind myself about more often. I know how much more energetic and sharp I become after a good night's sleep. Number 9, what works for you doesn't always or ever work for the others, and the other way around. This is trying to be mindful about giving an advice to someone or talking about what worked for me, and the same way being mindful when others are telling me like, oh, this works for me, you can try it out. You can certainly try it out, but often things worked for this specific person because of that person's traits, because of the time, place, their background, something that you may not even influence. Number 10, don't give advice unless explicitly asked for. Often people tell you about something, they can complain about something that happened to them, and a lot of people have this urge to jump into the solutions right away. Sometimes the person never wants any solution or an advice. They just want to vent. And it's often so hard to refrain from suggesting some solutions, but I think it's still good at least to try to keep it in mind and not do it too quickly. For myself, I decided that might be a good idea to ask like, oh, do you just want to share that or do you want my idea of how that could be solved? Assume good intentions. This might be very naive, but I will give people the benefit of the doubt because I believe in good in people. Number 12, relationships are the key to happiness. Work on them. I may or may not like to admit that, but we are very social creatures. As an introvert, I need quite a lot of time to recover from social interactions, but I love being around people, and I know that at the end of the day, it's the relationship with close people that make you happier. It could be your friends, your family, of course your significant other, your colleagues, neighbors. It's a hard work, but it pays off manifold. Number 13, always do the best you can. This is the principle that gives me a lot of hope and security to a certain extent, because if I know that I have done everything I could, I would not be upset about the bad result, or if I failed, so to say, because I knew that that was my maximum. So this is the way I prefer to approach everything in life that I deem important. I believe doing your best is the only way to make progress and achieve results. Analyze how you feel after interacting with people and why. To me, it means a number of things. One of them is because I'm an introvert, I need to recover from my interactions with people. Often, if those interactions were not very pleasant, I find it very useful for myself to name the feeling, to figure out what that was, and then, of course, analyze why I feel how I feel. It could go both ways. It could be applied to good situations. I obviously apply it more to some less pleasant situations. And especially in unpleasant situations, I ask myself, why is it so? What led to that? And whether I would like to continue. Number 15, which is not exactly a principle, but more of a guideline. When anxious, ask yourself, will it bother me a year from now? I think it's a good question that puts things in perspective. Is it really important? Is it worth being anxious about? I know that I tend to be rather anxious about many things, and that is the question that helps me to be a bit more grounded. However, I must admit, sometimes the anxiety is so overwhelming that nothing really helps. To sum it up, the personal constitution is a fancy word for a set of principles that you define for yourself. You write them down so that you can get back to them and rewrite and revise them at any moment. The principles could include everything that you find important, any reminders to yourself, anything that helps you to put things into perspective when you need it. All of these principles have to come from you and not your family or friends or anybody else. I got mine inspired by the work of Gretchen Rubin and her commandments, and the great book of Ray Dalio, Principles, Life and Work. So there you have it. That is my approach to life principles that I call personal constitution. Do you have your own set of principles? Have you already written them down? Do you plan to do that? Please leave a comment below. And as always, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe to my channel for more useful videos in the future. Have a great day. Bye!